Good afternoon, guys, and welcome back to the Suburban Proletarian. My name is Greg, and I realize that the last 3 videos I've posted have been knife videos. For those of you who are subscribers who are into watches and not into knives, fear not. There's some watch videos coming up. It just occurred to me recently that I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary with the Zodiac Super Seawolf. I've been wearing this watch for about a year. I feel like I can speak about it pretty authoritatively at this point, so and I have not reviewed it, so that review is coming up. As a matter of fact, I have research materials here. I've got a whole pile of papers. That's going to be a big video. But today I wanted to take a chance to do one last knife video before we switch back over to watches, because I have received a package. And what is inside here, there's actually 3 things inside here. So I'm not going to take a lot of time with each of these, but I did want to take an opportunity to show you the knives as I'm seeing them for the first time. All 3 of the knives in here are cold steel knives. And as usual, I'm a bit behind the times. Cold Steel made some announcements, gosh, I think about 18 months ago, that they were switching steels. Back in 2015, I believe they had made a move to more American steel alloys with Carpenter Technology Steel as their main supplier. And that was great news for me, because Cartech is one of the largest employers in my local area. I have good friends that work for Cartech, but apparently there were supply problems, and with some of the higher end alloys there were some consistency problems, and now Cold Steel has shifted back to Japanese steels. So for instance, some of their high-end folding knives, and I think some fixed blades as well, had been made from CTS XHP for the last few years. Now they're being made from S35VN. Some of their mid-range folders and fixed blades, which had been made from AUS10A, moved over to CTS BD1, and now, because of the Cartech thing, they've gone to AUS10A, and that includes the Voyager series, and I've got a Voyager in this box. And lastly, probably nearest and dearest to my heart, some of Cold Steel's very best knives. Their base model beater fixed blades. Specifically, I'm talking about the SRK and the Recon Tanto. I have a long history with the SRK. I would have liked to have had a long history with the Recon Tanto, but I've never bought one before today, so this is going to be a new experience, although they're very similar knives in some ways. Those knives were both American production knives. The SRK was introduced in 1990, I think. The Recon Tanto was introduced in 1993. At that time, they were both made in America, and they were both made using what Cold Steel refers to as Carbon V. And Lynn Thompson and Cold Steel have always been very cagey about revealing what exactly Carbon V is. There's been speculation that it was, depending on what knife you were talking about, it was 1095 Crovan, or it was Sharon 0170-6 for the Camillus produced blades, which were probably the SRK, probably the original Recon Tanto, although Cold Steel hasn't been very forthcoming about that either. And in fact, some of the original Carbon V blades on Japanese produced knives, like early Carbon V Trailmasters, the speculation has been that Carbon V in that case was actually Japanese SK-5. So it's interesting. The SRK and the Recon Tanto started out as Carbon V. Later on, they were produced in AUS10A, which is also very tough but now stainless steel, whereas Carbon V was just a straight up carbon steel. Now they've gone back into the carbon steel fold, and they are in fact being made from Japanese SK-5, produced in Taiwan, of course, but they seem to have sort of come full circle. And the prices on these new Taiwanese-produced SRKs and Recon Tantos are just ridiculously low. And so they've kind of come full circle from Carbon V to maybe Carbon V. So anyway, I want to take a quick look at them over on the tabletop. Again, this is not going to be very involved, but I thought maybe you guys would like to check this out. Let's go do it. So as you can see, here is the box in question, and it is a pretty good sized one. And I will take the opportunity of opening it up to take our quick update look at the Kershaw CQC 8K. Hasn't changed much since 2 days or so ago when I filmed it last. I actually was using this chisel ground Tanto tip to scrape some rust inside my furnace yesterday, and amazingly enough, it barely lost any of its edge at all. It's still quite sharp after having scraped rusty steel with this Tanto tip. So far so good. Still holding up well. Lockup is still at about 50%, so not too bad. Not too bad at all. Oh, why am I closing it? I got to open up this box. Let's see what we got in here. Standard packing crap, that goes on the floor. More packing crap. One good sized cold steel box, the Recon Tanto. And our SRK. And lastly but not leastly, our Voyager. So let's chuck that stuff out of the way for the moment. We'll set the Voyager aside for the moment. We'll set the Recon Tanto aside for the moment. And we'll start with not uncharted territory. As I think I said in the introduction, I've owned one SRK in the past. My dad has owned a couple of these. He currently has one in Sanmai 3. And so let's take a look at what the SK-5 version looks like. Oh, bubble wrap, that's nice. There should be no surprises here. So the standard cold steel Secure-X sheath, made to look very much like Kydex, but it is in fact, I think, injection molded glass reinforced nylon. We've got a single retention strap here with a snap. Wow, and the blade is really, ooh, that is greasy. Yeah, that's super greasy, which is probably good for a carbon steel blade. I didn't think I was going to need rags to do this unboxing, so I'm afraid I won't be able to wipe it off for you. But that is definitely an SRK. Everything looks pretty much as would be expected. Craton handle feels exactly like every other SRK I've ever held. The grind looks pretty nice from what I can see through all the goop. As is expected with these Secure-X sheaths, it snaps in tightly. I don't think that's coming out of there. There's absolutely no rattle whatsoever. And again, you've got this single snap retention strap. Yeah, looks like an SRK. I don't know what else to say, but it looks good. I have very limited experience with these Taiwanese manufactured cold steels. Most of the cold steel knives I own already are older Japanese production, but the Craton handle looks very nice. I mean, the molding marks are nearly invisible. I would say this was right up there in terms of quality with the older American SRKs I've seen. I have noticed they've reduced the ricasso a great deal. This used to be about 3/4 of an inch, and it's now down to less than half an inch, which I'm not sure. You could almost use it as a choil before. You could choke up in front of the guard, which you obviously are not going to be able to do now, but you do have more usable edge. Gosh, I don't want to get too much grease on my mat here, but the usable edge is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost a full 6 inches of usable edge. So pretty nice, and very, very goopy. So, all right. I know that this video could get fairly lengthy, so let's move right along. We'll just set this aside and grab the Recon Tanto. Now we are treading in formerly uncharted territory. I have long wanted a Recon Tanto, but because of its similarity to the SRK, and because of its slightly larger size, and because of its somewhat more limited intended role, I have always opted for the SRK in the past. The Cold Steel Secure X sheath is very, very similar to that of the SRK. Obviously, the blade shape is a bit different, but the overall design looks very, very similar. The handle looks very, very similar. The little lanyard ferrule there is the same. Obviously, these two knives are kissing cousins, if you will. And when we take it out, well, the sheath does snap in with some authority. Again, no rattle. And when we withdraw it from the sheath, oh boy, yes, it is equally as goopy as the SRK. And I am equally unequipped with a rag as I was a few moments ago. So, wow, I've actually never held a Recon Tanto before. The blade is, I believe, a bit narrower. Well, actually, I'm not sure it is very much narrower than the SRK, but it is an inch. It is just about an inch longer than the SRK, and as a result, it has a much more weight forward balance to it. This is clearly a tactical blade, and I don't have much use for tactical blades, but I have a feeling that this might be a pretty good chopper. SK-5 is a pretty decent carbon steel. As I stated earlier, it may even be one of the former incarnations of Carbon V. At any rate, it's about the equivalent of 1080 or 1085 on the sort of American carbon steel scale. It's not supposed to be quite as good with edge retention as, say, for instance, 1095 Crovan, but it should be actually more impact resistant. So, yeah, no glaring errors that I can see. Again, the molding is perfect. The grind looks to be very, very, very consistent and good. And yeah, I'm pretty much looking forward to going out into the woods and beating the crap out of both of these knives. And hopefully you'll get a chance to see me do exactly that. So let's move on to our last example. This is the Cold Steel Voyager, large Voyager, clip point, plain edge, number 29AC. I'm no stranger to the Voyager series. Here's an extra large Tanto point Voyager that I bought back in the mid-1990s. I've carried this knife a lot. I've used it a lot. This is really old. This is one of the ones that actually had the molded in pocket clip, which aren't nearly as bad as people make out. I don't understand why everybody hated those so much. It actually has pretty good retention. And I mean, this is just a big beater of a blade, but it has a fairly standard backlock in it, which is very strong, very secure. I have wailed on this knife pretty much, and I've never had the lock fail. But the new Voyagers, oh, and this is AUS10A, but the new Voyager series is using AUS10A, and it features Cold Steel's Triad lock, which most of you, oh, we got a spare pocket clip in there. Oh, that's right, they're asymmetrical. So this is in case you want to switch over to left-hand carry, which I won't be doing. And anyway, the wow, look at that sucker. That is pretty darn impressive. Flat ground blade, not covered in goopy grease. It does have a little bit of oil there at the edge. Full flat grind blade, just about 4 inches long with about 3 2/3 inches usable cutting edge. Look at that belly. There isn't a straight section on that entire blade. This should be quite a nice slicer for camp chores. And again, going back to the Triad locking system, it's not the fastest or easiest lock to manipulate. It's got a very strong spring, and I'm not going to get deep into it. You can go online and actually see disassembled knives, videos of guys with their knives disassembled, so you can see exactly how the Triad lock works. But needless to say, it is the strongest locking system going today, and so this should be a very, very capable folding field knife. And wow, that's really nice for $40. That's pretty darn impressive. I'm not sure how I feel about the Maltese cross texture pattern here. I liked the old-fashioned, what were these, like little pyramids. This was good. That's a little goofy looking, but man, it is very, 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 very grippy. And I was a little, I don't know, put off by the shape of the handle. I was wondering how that would feel in my hand, but boy, that just locks in. As is typical with Cold Steel, you've got no jimping on the back of the blade, unfortunately. But there is a bit of jimping molded into the plastic here. And actually, that does give you a bit of purchase. It's not great, but it's not terrible. Yeah, this looks like it's going to be pretty nice. AUS10A. I think this is Rockwell, has a Rockwell hardness of somewhere like 57 to 58. So this should be easy to resharpen. It should hold an edge fairly well. I mean, at least those are my hopes. Of course, I have nothing to base that on as of yet, but it feels really nice. And wow, yeah, it snaps open with some authority. Yeah, I think that one's going to be good as well. I'm looking forward to using this one, as I am looking forward to using both of these as well. So that's an unboxing. I guess I don't really have much else to contribute. Let's go wrap this up before it gets too long. And so that was certainly not intended to be a review nor even a particularly in-depth look at any one of these knives. I just thought I'd share the unboxing with you. I enjoyed it. I hope you did the same. If you did, please consider clicking the like button down below. If you hated it, click the dislike button. Any feedback, positive or negative, is helpful to me. As always, if you're not a subscriber, please consider doing so. And you know the drill. Like, share, tell your friends. And when I post new videos to the channel, I hope to see each of you here then. Later, guys.